My foot's gonna sleep. Hi fam and welcome to a new video. Today I'm going to be doing something fun and interesting, so I hope that you like it. But essentially, if you have been watching my channel for the last few months, you would have realized that I have not wrapped up my books for April and May. I know. And if you're wondering what that means, it's essentially like at the end of every month I come and talk about the books that I've read. I give you like my thoughts, star ranking, etc., etc. And I have not done them for the books of April and May, and those are a combined total of 22 books. And like life just wasn't great during those few months, so let's not say why, but let's go into what I'm going to be doing right now. So what I'm going to be doing right now is, as you had probably seen in like the description and like thumbnail, I guess, is that I'm going to be tier ranking these books. And I have, in my special way, created 4 very smriti tier thingies. What are they called? Rows, tiers. Yeah, anyway, so I'm gonna explain to you what they are, because they are in sort of Hindi. They are in Hindi, and you may not understand it if you don't know what Hindi is, but I'm gonna explain to you what those tiers are now. So essentially, the first one is Kya Tatti, and Kya Tatti literally translates to what shit. Now, these books don't necessarily are like bad books. These just didn't work for me. It is a little harsh. I just love the word tatti. I'm sorry. It's just a great word. And I wanted to put it. But yeah, these books are not necessarily bad. They just didn't work for me. And that's why I put them in like this tier. The next tier, which is a little like above it, is Chalega, which literally translates to works. And these are books that I thought were average. I thought that they were good-ish, but didn't quite hit that sort of level for me. And then the next level, I'm gonna have to explain to quite a few people now, because I don't know if people would understand this, and it is Ladko ne bada acha khela. Now, I don't know how many of you have understood this reference or not, but back in the day, like I think early 2000s or something, there was this very famous Pakistani cricketer who was the Pakistan team captain, Inizimam Ul Haq. Now, there were a lot of like matches between India and Pakistan at that point of time. I think maybe there were some friendlies, or like was it during the World Cup? I'm not too sure. But Inzi was a person who would come and he'd have to talk post match to like the commentators and the people who are moderating the post match celebrations and stuff. And he wasn't very good in English, but he was very, very sweet. So he would always start off with Bismillah Rahman Rahim. Sorry, pardon me, I don't quite know like the line, but the next line would always be "Ladko ne bada acha khela." And like I remember back then, like whenever Inzi would come and talk, like I would, like me and my family would say "Ladko ne bada acha khela" with him while he was saying it, because it was just like the thing that he would say. So yeah, Ladko ne bada acha khela in this tier ranking video means that it was really, really good. I really liked it, but it didn't like hit the mark for me like fully. But yeah, that's that. And then the next one I might have to explain as well, is Mogambo Khushua. And Mogambo Khushua is essentially from a movie called Mr. India, which came out like, God, like 20, maybe 30, oh my god, 20 years ago. And it's basically, there's a villain whose name is Mogambo, and whenever like something happened which was good, he would say Mogambo Khushua, and it's sort of like this cult classic, essentially saying that Mogambo is happy, like he is happy. But yeah, that's those are the tier ranks. Those are the tiers that I have explained to you now. And I hope you don't think I'm an absolute weirdo, but like yeah, if you understand these references, please tell me I am not crazy down in the comments. But without any further ado, let us begin with the tier ranking. So how this is going to go is that I have already put all the books based on the order that I have read them. So from the first book that I read in April to the last book that I read in May, and total 22 books, as I have said. I will talk to you very briefly about the book, what it's about, and then I will put it in its tier, and then I will tell you why I put it in that tier, and then we move on to the next book. I hope that makes sense to you. Anyway, the first book I want to talk to you about. Oh, okay. Actually, April was Lit with Indian Lit month, and Lit with Indian Lit is essentially a readathon that I run where I encourage people to read translated Indian literature. But April was just not a good month for me. I was in like this weird slump, and also just there was a lot going on in India just generally. So yeah, it was just not a good mind space for me to read. I instead like binge watched a fuck ton of Criminal Minds. But anyway, the first book that I read was Ismat Chugtai's Masooma, which is translated from Urdu to English. And this is essentially a short novella of sorts about this young girl who moves from Hyderabad to Bombay with her family. Her father's passed, so the family doesn't really have like a way to kind of survive and really make money. So essentially, what the mother and like a bunch of their well wishers do is essentially pimp her out. She's the eldest daughter, and they think that by like getting her a patron, she will be able to take care of like all the other kids in the family and stuff like that. And yeah, that's basically what happens. She is then like pimped out from like one patron to another patron to another patron, and you just see how that changes her, and it's sort of like a breaking of innocence, but also you get to see the underbelly of the Bombay like film industry, which is Bollywood, because like a lot of people involved in this are from there. So for ranking it, however, I am going to have to put this in Kya Tatti, because what I didn't like about this book was that we never got to hear Nilufar or Masooma, the main protagonist's perspective. Like, we never got to hear her thoughts or like what was happening. We got to hear what she was saying, but I never got to like be inside her head and get to hear from her itself. If that makes sense to you. So yeah, that's why I didn't like it that much. I thought that it could have been much better had it been that. The next book is Four Strokes of Luck by Perumal Murugan. This is a short story collection by him, and it I think is the newest one by him. And yeah, I like Perumal Murugan in general. I think that he does a great job in writing simply, but like he really tells you about characters, etc. And for this one, I'm gonna have to put this in Chalega, only because like I didn't get anything out of it. Like it wasn't like outstanding or like something that I actually remember now. Yeah, that it was just okay. So yeah. The next book is Harbart by Nabarun Bhattacharya, who funnily is Mahasweta Devi's son. But yeah, this short book, again, because I could read only short books this month, is basically about this young man who was like orphaned when he was very young, and now he lives in the attic of his uncle. And he has this business where he can communicate with like the people who have passed. But yeah, this lands him in a lot of shenanigans, and then there are things that happen. But for me, I would put this in Chalega, because I felt like it was good. Like, it was fine. I liked the writing, I liked what it was trying to say, but it didn't like wow me in any sort of way. But yeah, I still think that like it's a good sort of read which you can read very quickly, and yeah, let me know if you've read it or want to read it. The next book is Rita Wellingkar by Shanta, Ghokhale, and this is translated from Marathi to English. The previous book was translated from Bengali to English. But yeah, this one is essentially about this lady who's about like I think in her 40s, and essentially she's gone through a sort of nervous breakdown, and she's like in an institution, and she's talking about her life and what led to this. So we essentially get to know about her life and how she is like the daughter of these people, and how she's like sort of the breadwinner of the family, and how she's single, and just a lot of things. But it's essentially about like expectations of society and mental health, and I loved this so much. It clearly goes into Mogama Kushwa. It is probably one of my favorite reads of the year. Just what a wonderful find. 181 pages, stunning like thoughts and sentences, and just everything was just so wonderful. I absolutely loved it. I would encourage everyone to read it. But yeah, the next book is Dead Men Tell Tales by Dr. Umadathan, and this is a book translated from Malayalam to English, and this is non-fiction. Essentially, this is sort of like a memoir where he talks about like his journey becoming a forensic scientist and like a person who was associated with the Kerala police, and he was called the Sherlock of Kerala because he helped solve a lot of cases with this scientific forensic knowledge that he had. And he talks about like a lot of these cases and like what all happened. But and I like that. But yeah, I'm gonna rank it now, and I'm gonna put it in Ladko Ne Bada Acha Khela because I liked the fact that we got to know about all of these like different cases, and he like scientifically explained it to us and like all of that. But he also got really stuck with like the bureaucracy aspect of it, and he would keep like saying like this guy who is my friend, and like really like it was just like a huge like I don't know. It felt very like uncle sort of thing, where like an uncle is telling you stories, and he was like this guy who's really famous now is actually my friend, and I'm like great. But like the other parts of it was cool, and I'm just gonna leave that like him just being an uncle. I don't know. The next book is Whereabouts by Jhumpa Lahiri, and I have a separate like review for it, which is non-spoilery, so you can check that out to understand what my thoughts were. But this is her latest novel, and it is basically about this professor. We don't really get to know what her name is, but in Italy, and just her thoughts, and like we get to see like little like snippets of her life. And for me, Jhumpa Lahiri is God tier, so she goes into God tier, which is Mogambo Kushwa, because like I don't think she can do any wrong. I did have some issues with the book towards the very end, and I don't think that this book is for everyone. And maybe you should go into it with knowing certain things. So you should check out that review for more information. The next two books I can sort of club together because I basically read the Hindi version, which is the book that was written in Hindi, and then I read the translation as well side by side, just because like I wanted to do that. And that is Ishq Mein Sheher Hona, or the A City Happens in Love by Ravish Kumar. Ravish Kumar is a really famous news reporter in India. He reports primarily in Hindi, and he wrote these poems of sorts, which are called Laprek, which are these short poems about falling in love in the city. And this was a book which was very like Delhi oriented, and I don't think I knew fully well what I was getting into while I started reading this, so I didn't like it. So I'm gonna put it in Kya Tatti. I actually DNF'd Ishq Mein Sheher Hona and then ultimately just like read A City Happens in Love in English only because I just couldn't. Poetry anyway has not been my thing since like the beginning of like schoolhood, I guess. And I just it was very Delhi oriented. If you're not from Delhi, you're not gonna like fully appreciate it. And also I don't think I fully loved the whole concept of Laprek. So yeah, so it didn't work for me, but it might work for you. So well, there we go. So that is a wrap for April, and now we move on to May, where I have read a lot of these books in reading vlogs. So hopefully you would have seen those to get my full-blown thoughts on them, but I will talk to you briefly about them now. So the first five are books that I read for my Asian readathon vlog for thrillers. So essentially what I do is that I take a bunch of thrillers and I read them and then I rank them and like put marks for them based on like five things that I think are super important, which is writing, plot, characterization, pacing, and predictability and like suspense. Those are the five things that I think are super important, and I read these five books that I'm going to talk to you about now, but you can see my thoughts in detail in that vlog, which I think was super fun and super good. So yes. So the first book is Death by Dumpling by Vivien Chein, and this was a goodish book. I'm gonna put this in Chalega and also tell you what this book is about. It's about this girl who works at her family's restaurant. This restaurant is part of like this Chinese or like Asian mall of sorts, where there are like a lot of these shops which are purely run by Asians. But yeah, so essentially what happens is that the owner of this mall place is murdered by dumplings because he has a deathly shellfish allergy, and he dies because of that, and everyone sort of knows this. But that shellfish dumpling, or like the prawn dumpling, came from her family's restaurant, so like a lot of the people in it are questioned and all of that sort of stuff. And I thought that this book was okay, which is why I put it in Chalega. It's very like a cozy mystery sort of vibe, and I liked the characters were a bit whatever, and like you sort of could guess who the murderer was, at least I could. But yeah, I thought that it was fine, and I'm probably gonna read the books in the series because it's an entire series which have like some really fun names. So yeah, the next one is Arsenic and Adobo by Mia P. Manansala, and this one is very similar to the previous one. Essentially, it's about this girl who comes back and is working for her family's restaurant, and her ex is a food critic, and he comes to the restaurant and is again murdered by food. So yeah, that's what happens, and I did not like this book at all. I thought that it was very poorly written. It is her debut novel, so hopefully, like, I don't know, she'll learn, I guess. But I just did not like it. Yeah. Anyway, you will see all my thoughts in that vlog. I go deep into it. But yeah, I was very disappointed by it because I thought that it was gonna be really good, and it wasn't. So well, the next book is Murder at Malabar Hill by Sujata Masi. And this is a book about Parveen Mistry, who is one of the first lawyers in India. This is actually set in 1920s in Bombay, which is the city that I live in. So I was like, yeah. But anyway, this is essentially about Parveen, and one of her clients goes, like, there's a murder that happens in their house, and she gets like involved in it, and she like supposedly tries to solve it and stuff like that. And there's a lot of other things that also happen, which I liked, and I really like this book. However, I still am a little hesitant to put this into Mogambo Khushwa. I think I'm gonna put it in Ladko Ne Bada Acha Kila because I really liked it, but it wasn't like, whoa, you know. But yeah, anyway, next one is The Good Son by You-Jeong. And this is a Korean book translated from Korean to English, and it is about basically this 26-year-old guy who is prone to seizures, and essentially he wakes up in the morning and he finds that he is covered in blood. He goes out and he realizes that his mother is dead. So he's like, wait, what happened? Because he doesn't remember what happened in like the night before because of the seizure that happens, and he can't remember. So he's trying to put things together, but also at the same point of time save his own butt, and like not get framed for this murder, or like did he do the murdering? He doesn't know. And we sort of see all of this happening in his head. And I will put this into Ladko Ne Bada Acha Khela again because I really liked it. I think I would put it into Mogambo Khushwa, like top tier for the first few 100 pages maybe. But then after that it sort of went down and got a little predictable, so I didn't quite like it there. But like for the first 100 pages, just stunning, amazing, brilliant. And I really liked being in this guy's head. Like it was just very like, what is gonna happen? And it was a very compulsive read for me. So yeah. The next book is Confessions by Kanya Minato, and this is a Japanese book translated from Japanese to English. And this book was, oh wow. But yeah, let me first tell you. Essentially, we are told of this lady who is a middle grade teacher, and she's talking to her class and telling them that she's going to be resigning, and this is her last day. And through that, she starts talking about her child who was killed or like died in the pool, but she thinks that the class has something to do with it, and she has kind of figured out who may have done the actual murder, and thus she takes revenge. And I thought that would be the end of it, but nope. From there we then get to see like various other people's perspectives as to how like this like sort of affected them, and it was just fucking like, what? So for this, I'm definitely putting this into Mogambo Khushwa. This just like really surprised me. and just had so many plot twists and so many things that were happening. I was just shocked. I could have not guessed what was coming next. I really, really enjoyed it, and it was quite short and wonderful. And yeah, so that is the end of my mystery bit. Yeah, check out that vlog if you want to. But let's move on to another thing that I vlogged. So everyone and their mom knows about Shadow and Bone now. It is a book series which is now made into a Netflix series, and everyone's watched it and everyone raves about it. And I wanted to read the books before I watch the series, of course. That is just typical Smriti behavior, or just general book person behavior, I guess. But yeah, this was right, and I have vlogged about me reading the entire series and then my thoughts on it. So, like, you can check that out. I will link it up and down in the description. So yes, anyway, I'm going to try to tell you what the first book is about, because I can't tell you about the next two because they would be spoilers as to what happened in the first book's plot. But essentially, we are following this world where there is magic, and the people who can do magic are Grisha, and they are not liked in the community because they are feared, essentially, and people who are feared, you don't like. Anyway, also in this land is this thing called the Unsea, or the Fold, which is like this very dark piece of land which divides the country into half, and it is full of monsters, and it's really, really difficult to like cross over. But yeah, there is only one person who can destroy that, and that is a person who has sun summoning charms or magic or whatever. And yeah, that's basically what happens. And this mean girl who is Alina, she's an orphan, and it turns out that she has this magic, and she is whisked off to the castle, and then there's a lot of other things that happen. But anyway, I thought that this book was okay. Solid on pace, lots of things happening, but I felt like it was just not a very cohesive book. You could clearly see that this was the author's first book, so did not like it. But the next book, however, was just suffered from like second book, like middle book thing. So clearly going into Kyatatti, it was just, I did not like it. In the first like 50 pages, there was just so much that happened, and then the next 300 pages like was just nothing, and then the last 50 pages like a fuck ton happened. So pacing wise was really bad. I like nothing really happened. I felt like even like sometimes like action wise a lot doesn't happen, but character development wise a lot happens, but that didn't happen in this book either. So it just went to Kyatatti. Okay, I speak more about it in my vlog. And then the last one, which is the end of the trilogy, I'm gonna again put into Chalega, because it was fine, it was good. Like, whatever, you will see my thoughts on this in the wrap up thingy that I did for this. But it was okay for me. I honestly have nothing to say about this book and this series. Like, it was fine. Whatever. The next book that I read is Grief is the Thing with Feathers by Max Porter, and this is a really, really weird book to explain. Essentially, we're following this family who has lost the mother or the wife, and to help them cope with the loss and the grief, a crow comes to live with them, and this crow can talk to them, and we hear from the crow's perspective, which is really, really weird, and like just a lot of like nonsense talk, if you get what I mean. And it was a weird book. But I am going to put this in Chalega and not Kyatatti, because there was still parts of this book and the grief that I really connected with. I myself was going through something at that point of time, and I could connect with it then. So perhaps it was like more of a situational thing. But yeah, I thought that this book was good in terms of that, and it's definitely not going to be everyone's cup of tea. Because it's really, really weird, but I think that it had some very interesting things to say, and it was done in a really interesting, weird manner. So yeah. The next book that I read is Minor Details by Adaina Shibli. I think that's how her name is said. If I am wrong, I am very wrong. But she is actually Palestinian, and this book is translated from Arabic to English. And this book is broken up into two parts. The first part is essentially about this Israeli soldier and things that happened way back in the day. And it was very questionable and terrible, and definitely look up trigger warnings for a lot of things, including rape and just some very gory, weird stuff. So that was that perspective. And then we get to see many years later this young girl who is a journalist, and she has basically uncovered this like rape that happens, and she gets to know about this, and she's kind of fixated on it for some weird reason. She tries to find out more about it, and that's basically her journey. And I really like this book, though it didn't quite hit the like, oh my god, fucking excellent thing, but it was very close, and that's why I would like to put it in Ladko Ne Bada Acha Khela. I really like the way that it was written. The first part of it was like really got to me, but like I loved the second part and what all it did. And it just had like the sort of connections that you saw between the first part and the second part. Like it's absolutely nuts and really well crafted, and I would definitely recommend. The next book is Battlefield by Vishram Bedekar, translated from Marathi to English by Cherry Pinto. But yeah, this book is essentially like was written in 1939 if I'm not mistaken, and it was sort of a response to like the Second World War, but it is the story of this young man who is coming back to India during when like everything the Second World War is sort of happening, and he's in this boat, and there are a bunch of other like Jews who are escaping Germany at that point of time who are in the boat as well, and it's sort of like a love story of sorts of him and this girl, and how it went. I'm not going to give you spoilers, but more than anything, it tells you about the time, and about the political situation, about the social situation, and I'm going to put this into Ladko Ne Bada Acha Khela. Earlier I would have probably put it into Chalega, but I recently got an understanding of like the context of in which this book was written, and I really liked that, and yeah, it really gave me an understanding of what the author was going for, so I liked it. The book is a little dated, perhaps not in terms of like, oh, questionable things happening in this book or whatever, but just like it was set in 1939 and was written in 1939, so like a lot of things you won't quite relate to. There's a bit of like insta lovey stuff which is in it, which like, you know, we in this current day and age don't particularly like, but was like a norm of back then. But yeah, and I still really like the way that it was written. It was very simple. It was written in a month apparently, which is crazy. And this guy has never written another book because this is all he wanted to like put across, because he was just so taken by like everything that was happening in the world at that point of time, and wanted to talk about it. And he talks about like the ways we look at people and just the whole situation of people at that point of time, and it really made me want to like do more research on what was happening at that point of time, especially on how there were so many Jewish people who went to Shanghai. I really wanted to know more books based in that time and what that was like. So if you have any like recommendations, please do let me know down in the comments. And we are down to the last 3. But the next 2 books I have read for a video that I have not yet made. Fun times. So please force me to make that video. But also, I'm not gonna tell you what that video is right now. Maybe you'll guess it, I don't know, but yeah, I'm just gonna talk to you very briefly about them, and that's it. The first book is Christina Lauren's Soulmate Equation, and this is the latest book, and it's essentially about this single mom who gets matched on this dating app of sorts with the founder of the organization of the dating app, and then she is sort of paid to interact with them, and like it's about how they maybe fall in love or like what exactly happens and blah 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 blah. And I am going to give this book, I don't know, it sort of like goes between Chalega and Kya Dirty. I think I'm gonna put it in Kya Dirty. I didn't like this book. I thought that it was strictly okay. I could have put this in Chalega, but I think that I expected more. And I just didn't believe in the romance as much. I thought that it was not very well plotted. And yeah, I guess more thoughts later in the other video. But yeah, the next book is The One by John Mars, and essentially we are following a bunch of people in this world where again there is this matchmaking service that can match people based on your genetics to find you your soulmate. And that is what it does, and we essentially find various people who have been matched. And it is a thriller, and it is very very interesting. I would give this one a solid ladko ne bada acha khela, because in the beginning it was a little difficult to kind of just understand all these different people, because there were like at least 8 people if I'm not mistaken. But it was very compelling to read. There were very very short chapters, and it moved by really really fast. It wasn't like, oh my god, fucking amazing, next best thing in the world, which is why I'm not going to put it in Mogambo Khushwa. And I did have some issues with it, but overall, really fun read. And then the last book that we have is a book that I've also reviewed separately. It was one of my most anticipated reads of 2021, and that is Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Essentially, we are following 4 siblings who throw a party in the 80s in Malibu, and how it ultimately ends up in flames. I am going to give this book a Chalega, because I firstly expect a lot from Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't think that she fully delivered on this. This book is broken up into 2 parts, and the first part was fine, but the second part I kind of was like wanting for more. I feel like usually she does a brilliant job with characterizations and like making you really like love a character or hate a character, but here I just felt like she didn't have enough time with either of them, and there were like 4 different characters and 4 different siblings. So yeah, so I have like more thoughts, and like will tell you more about the book in that dedicated review, so you can check that out. But that is where we stand right now, and this is the collated list. So we have 3 books in Mogambo Khushwa, we have 6 books in Ladko Ne Bada Acha Khela, 7 in Chalega, and 6 again in Kya Dirty. So I don't know, if I look at this, I don't know, it seems pretty even in terms of like the good and the bad and the okay, if that makes sense to you. So yeah, so that's what my reading month was for April and May. If you have read any of these books, let me know what your thoughts were on those books. And if you have reached till here, leave me like a heart emoji of any color of your choice. That is all for now. I hope that this was fun. I will try to be more regular with my wrap-ups, and I will see you in my next video. Okay, bye!